This is an animated film I made last year. It's called 7 and 6 Into the Spooky Hole. And since it's screening, I had a number of people ask what I did when I was making it. So I decided to put together this behind-the-scenes / audio commentary, how I animated 7 and 6. So I made this film last summer as part of a film competition where competitors were given 90 days to make a film. And by the time I decided to do an animated film and had a script written, I had wasted about half of the days for the competition to get the project done. So this whole thing had to come together pretty fast. The characters 7 and 6, I've been playing around with these characters for a number of years, writing stories and coming up with ideas for them. I just really love the idea of a boy and his telepathic dog encountering supernatural and mythological creatures and having to face their fears and defeat them. A few years ago, I made an animated short with these characters, and this was for a 7-day competition, and it was pretty rough. It was kind of sloppy and jagged. I thought it looked a bit like early 90s computer animation. So it was kind of a prototype for these characters and doing a bit of a funny, sort of scary story. And then a few years later, I did a follow-up, and it was a lot better than the first attempt, but there were still a lot of rough edges with this one. It was starting to look a little South Parky, but it was a big step forward from the very first one I did. So I decided to do an episode where 7 and 6 visit a creepy carnival. It just seemed like a good opportunity to do like a Goosebumps sort of thing and have all these Tim Burton vibes going on throughout the thing.
Not lost, are you?
Oh, jeez.
So the first thing I did was to storyboard the project, mostly just so I would have a guide of what the scenes were going to be and how the actions would work visually, and just to ensure that I wasn't wasting time on backgrounds and scenes that weren't needed.
6, are you sure about this?
Yes, there's an evil presence in this house and we have to get it out.
Okay, do you see it anywhere?
Yes, it's right there.
We recorded all the dialogue, and it only took a few hours to do. I play the voice of 7.
This is all that toaster's fault. I wish I could just explain the whole exorcism thing to Mom.
And I also do the voice of the evil Carney.
I'll give you entertainment. Admission just $10 each.
My friend Austin Webb played the voice of 6.
It feeds on souls. He's feeding us to the ride itself.
And for the bus driver, I got my acting friend Joe Casterline.
Are you sure this is the right way to the fair?
The only way I know of. But I ain't been there for some time. Not since they gave me that restraining order.
7 has a teenage sister named Zell, and that was voiced by my wife, Tiff.
I know you snuck out of the house. Those decoys in your room, they aren't fooling anyone.
She also stepped in and did the voice for the mom.
I don't think you should go to the fair tonight.
What? You gotta let me go to the fair.
And for the voice of the ride and the big cat demon at the end, I came across Rick Sellers, who is a professional voice actor and who did a great Paul Frees impression.
Fight all you want, but I'll still eat your soul. No one escapes from the spooky hole.
I wanted to give the characters a much cleaner and more detailed style than they had before. It helped to actually use a drawing tablet this time around. All the characters are drawn in layers. There's a layer for each arm and leg, and their faces have eyes, eyelids, and pupils. And in After Effects, I'm able to parent all the different layers together and pin them together where they can move and rotate on axis points. So this let me move the characters a bit like stop motion. So it really streamlined the animation process. I put a lot of time building the world through the backgrounds and through the scenery. I made all the backgrounds in Photoshop by taking textures of parchment and construction paper and tinting them different colors, cutting out the shapes and putting them together. And the paper texture also gave a bit of a grit that kind of gives a look to everything, makes everything feel a little more real and a little more grimy and dusty, which I really liked. All of the scenes were built in layers, and they had different planes of depth to help give the world a bit more of a three-dimensional quality while still being two-dimensional pieces. The camera doesn't move around a lot because I felt it was a bit distracting if it was moving too much. It was better to keep things more or less stationary, but there were a number of scenes where a shot felt better to have some camera movements and give the scene size to it. Shots like 7 and 6 walking through the fairgrounds really needed that tracking motion, so you could see the desolation and the grunginess of the place. Then there were shots like on the ride, which really had to be a sort of 3D environment to push the viewer down the track as sort of a POV of the ride. One of the trickiest scenes was the underground portion of the ride because it really had to feel like this big, expansive cavern. The thing I did was to simply imply the size by having all these sort of stalagmites sticking up and down. So you never see the top and bottom of where they are, but you still have a sense of where they are spatially. They're just sort of suspended on this long roller coaster track in this big cave, like a void. And that one took a little bit of figuring out. Bringing all these elements together in such a short time was a real challenge. It really was like a marathon type of thing to get it all done before the deadline. And there's one bit of animation I did have help on, and that was for the computer graphics for the video game. And those were done by my 13-year-old son, Destry. He just sort of went to work and made all these 8-bit graphics that were really funny. He also provided the voice of the old man in the game.
Get off my lawn!
One thing I didn't go into great detail with was the actual animation process, and I think I'm saving that for another video. So if you're interested in animating in After Effects and doing this kind of style of animation, check that out, and also check out 7 and 6 Into the Spooky Hole.